Welcome to Business Class Money Minutes, powered by American Express. This is the podcast unpacking big money topics for small business owners, providing you with the tools and insights to solve those common financial headaches and challenges. I'm your host, founder and entrepreneur Sharmadean Reid, and today I'm joined by chef, author and founder Sarit Packer of London restaurant Honey & Co. to discuss the often thorny issue of separating personal and business finances. Sarit and her partner and husband Itamar launched their business 10 years ago with a starting investment of £30,000 that was completely self-funded. As a small business, you could run your company using your personal cards, but there can be downsides associated with doing so. If you're currently using a personal card for business finances, then this episode is definitely for you. Sarit, thank you for being here and welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's go right back to the beginning. And I love this topic because when I started my nail salon 12 years ago, I did exactly the same, which is I had no idea how to separate my personal and business finances. What was your journey like?
I mean, we didn't even realize that we had to separate our personal
Neither
and
did
our
I.
business finances at the start.
Why didn't they teach us this at school?
And this should be the ABC. I also want to say that as a chef coming here with my nails and my hands is such a scary thing to do. I'm holding my I'm holding my hands in fists so you don't look at my nails. Anyway, apart from that, it was early days. We had kind of really no idea. So my husband's father passed away when he was younger, and he had left this flat in Israel, which wasn't worth a flat in London, but it was worth something, and it was between him and his brother. So at kind of this stage where my husband was like, I need to do something for myself. I'm going to sell this flat, split it with my brother, and let's do something. And I was like, no, I don't want to do anything. I had a really high-paying job. I was doing really well for myself. And I was really scared. I had a business before in Israel, and
what were you doing before?
I had a pastry business in Israel, and that kind of didn't really work out, and I left that, and it was really hard for me to do. And then when I came to London after a few years, I started working at Ottolenghi, and then I ran all their pastry, and then I worked up to executive chef in Nopi and the project. And I, even though wanted something for myself, was also like really scared because you get paid well and you know what you're doing, and I knew my job in and out. And I was kind of like, what are we going to do? This like opening in London in this kind of, we have no money. But he was very adamant, and he's very persuasive, my husband. So we took all that money, which was about £30,000, and said, look, we're just going to try and we see what we can do with that.
So you had your initial investment of £30,000, which was your own money. How did you start to understand what is your money versus business money?
I think it took a good 6 months, let's say, because we had started and said, we give everything we have for this. So we found this property. It was kind of with a working kitchen, but very basic. And we just needed to kind of give it a bit of a paint job and a bit of furniture. And we said, we can just about handle that. We'll put the deposit down. It was just after the financial downturn, 2012. Quite a few properties were empty in central London. So we were quite lucky in catching a property that had this kitchen that was there. So we had we didn't need to invest anything in a kitchen.
That's amazing. Yeah. That's usually the biggest cost, right?
It is. And it was a very basic kitchen, but we've been chefs for a long, long time. So we knew, okay, even with a basic kitchen, we can cook something here. And then we emptied our flat. We took all our cutlery. We took our teapot. We took everything that worked. And we kind of said, we just said, we're going to be there all the time. It doesn't matter what we have in the house, and we don't want to spend the money. And when time comes, we'll replace. And this is where the lines get blurred. We took our home computer. We took paperwork, paper, like actual writing paper, notebooks, and we just emptied the flat out, and cushions, and almost everything that was in that first restaurant was just ours. And how do you quantify that later? How do you say
this asset?
Yes, it's a ridiculous asset, but it's also an asset you have to work. And then at some stage, and I reckon it was about 6 months, we started handing in some paperwork to an accountant, and he said, well, what do you mean? What is this payment here? What is this payment here? And we were only using our cards because we didn't get cards that early on. And that's when we really had to start thinking, okay, there needs to be a line where this is money that the restaurant does, and this is our money, and slowly start to separate that out. But it really did take a long time.
I would say that I had a completely identical experience. When I opened my first salon in Dalston, the cupboard was from my bedroom. All of the magazines and books were mine. The plants, everything was just what was already in my house. And I wanted my nail salon to effectively look like my living room. So I just, instead of duplicating everything, I just took everything. But then the problem is you do have to replace your own items at some point, and then you're spending twice. So I think that this is a really key lesson for the business owners that are listening, is to try and have a clean separation from day one, because it gets very, very messy later down the line. So at what point did you transition from personal to business cards to manage your business finance, and what was the catalyst that prompted that?
So I think after 6 months, and we had started hiring some staff, so it wasn't just us at work, and we wanted our life to start looking normal again. So to have some stuff at home again.
I love that, because I can picture it. I'm getting almost PTSD. I want to be normal again, not like in my business 24/7.
But openings are like that. And actually, we've just done another opening, and I wish I could tell you that we've absolutely learned from our lessons, but we haven't fully, because we, again, wanted this restaurant to feel like our home. So things have come from our home now, like art, but stuff that makes us feel at home and makes our customers then think,
Totally.
we're part of their kind of family. And look, and so even with lessons learned, there is still a separation, even though now we know to record things much better, what's gone where and what has been used. And we replace things faster nowadays, but still a lot of the same patterns. But so I would say, like about 6 months in, with the accountant, some discussions, how are we doing, how's the business going? And the advantage of restaurant business is you start making money the day you open your door. So it's, if you're nice and busy, it's quite easy to return an investment. So as soon as we had returned that investment, and that took about 6 months, we started putting any new money into new things, whether they were replacing something for us at home or getting a new thing for the actual location at the time. So probably about another 6 months until we felt even.
And at that point, that's when you were like, I'm going to get a business card. I'm going to use this business card for business expenses and not be using my personal debit card for everything.
Absolutely. And then we absolutely stopped. But yeah, it takes a lot of training to do. But it makes it easier. Makes it easier to hand in your paperwork to the accountant, because you don't have to show them, your Netflix account, or there are things that are yours and things that are the businesses, and that's the way it should be.
It makes it so much easier for yourself, because particularly if you're a creative entrepreneur, you don't really want to be sitting there at the end of each month separating line by line all of the expenses. So again, it's very, very important to try and do this right from the offset. So the catalyst for you was the fact that your revenue, as you said, restaurants, you start making cash immediately. Yeah. Your revenue grew considerably with your infamy, with your reputation rather. And, were you really prepared for that revenue growth? And how did you handle that, emotionally as well as, physically with your finances?
I think for the first 2 years, we were quite smart. Everything we made, we had put back in, because we took a very, very basic place and did very basic things to it. So every 6 months, if there was a bit of money, we took some time and we put it back in. We got new furniture, we got new kitchen equipment, we got staff, which was the most important thing. Let's not forget, at the beginning, it was just my husband and myself. So hiring the staff, all of that. So basically everything we made over those first kind of 2 years went back into the business very much. And then we started feeling a bit tied in by this place, because we took a place that was very small, our first restaurant, because of our budget and because of everything. It was tiny, the 25-seater, all in all, which is very, very small kitchen. And that's when we started looking for another premises. And it was the only way to channel all the work, because by then we had hired enough employees that were running the existing Honey & Co. They were doing a good job at it. And Itamar and I were kind of, in a way, kicked out of the day-to-day kitchen. And we're just managing it, but there was no need to manage it if nothing else was happening. So we started looking for our second thing 2 years in. We also wrote a cookbook in between. We snuck one in quickly. And then we were working on this Honey and Smoke, which is our bigger restaurant. We put in an offer. It was very scary. It was quite a big offer. And we, in our heads, thought, okay, if that's the money a small place makes, you make the place 4 times larger, you make the revenue 4 times larger. I wish that was the truth. We spoke to a lot of friends that are in the business, and everyone told us the second place is really hard. But you can, you can listen to people, but you still need to experience it yourself. So, yeah, we kind of put all our energy in that. Took a long time to negotiate the contract. Took a long time to refurb, and actually we didn't manage to get it open until 2016. So 4 years in, even though we had started 2 years in to look for it. And it was crazy.
But you said, I mean, you were scared to go into business initially anyway, because you'd had an experience before that was negative, and a lot of successful founders I speak to have had one at least failed business or failed endeavor under their belt. But you did it anyway, and it worked in those first 2 years. How did it feel for you to have, created a business that was financially viable?
It was really amazing. I mean, and it really kicked off. Like, we were not expecting that at all. The idea was like a kind of small place, us cooking, people eating, really like covering expenses, making sure we had a comfortable life. But we never thought it would go to this place. When we got the first offer of writing a cookbook, we were floored and said no to the first few agents that came through, and in the end kind of gave in after a while. And that helped as well, because that gives a deposit and it gives you some confidence. And the book did really well. Then the restaurants got even busier. And then everything was like this, and we were like, whoa, what's happening here? And, you start doing catering, you start doing all these kind of things. And we just realized that every person we added to the company. There was not a stage where there wasn't a very obvious, clear line to why adding this person adds revenue. Now we're at a slightly different stage. We're a bigger company. It kind of works on a different kind of thing. But in those early days, growing from a company of 3 to 6 to 10 to 15, that's where you see like massive changes. So it was all amazingly exciting.
So after those 2 years, when you started to think about expanding, were you prepared for those 2 years of searching cost increase effectively to grow the business? Because what typically happens is you're incrementally growing, and you're growing and growing, and then to basically take it to the next level, there's a massive investment that needs to happen. You already said that your cookbook advance gave you the deposit, which I've been there and done that as well myself. How did you handle such a large increase in cost at that 4-year point?
Well, I think Honey & Co. was a cash cow, small but super efficient. It would feed like 150, 200 people a day in that 25-seater, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and it was always busy. And the team was like nicely kind of trained and involved and really kind of taking it on. And it was just making kind of its own money, and that was the money we said we're going to invest in this new place. And we had decided that we would kind of times 10 the investment of the first place. So we were going for a budget of 300 to open the bigger restaurant. It's a far bigger restaurant. It's a 90-seater, and even that was hugely optimistic. Every person we spoke to just looked at us and said, that is not enough of a budget to open a restaurant.
No way.
And we were like, well, that's all we have. Like, this is going to be enough. And they were like, no, it's not. And we had turned an old tile shop into this restaurant. So we had to get extraction. We had to get council approval, all of this stuff. And we were extremely optimistic. I mean, we just passed the budget, but without doing everything we should have done. And it subsequently cost us quite a bit of money. So I would say, if potentially one thing I would tell myself then is go and get the investment or the loan then. Do it right first. Don't do this piecemeal, because it costs a lot of money. Trying to correct a mistake is much harder than just spending the money in the first place. But we just said we're only going to spend what we have made.
What was that decision of not taking investment? What was that driven by?
I really hate debt. I have I was born in a family where debt is not a thing that you do. I was scared to take a mortgage in the first place on a flat. Everything like that. I don't like I'm a very control freak. I don't like not knowing what I've spent and where my money is exactly. And I don't like the idea of living off of someone else's money. I had to work on myself quite a lot to understand that this isn't always the best way to do
Definitely.
things.
And that's kind of what I was going to get onto next, which is I can definitely identify. I grew up very working class. It was discouraged to have debt. If you did have debt, it felt like this thing hanging around your neck. And it took me a very long time to decouple those financial beliefs that I'd inherited from my parents to actually drive my business forward. And actually, I do think that one of the things that held my business back is because I did not want to talk to any investors, any banks, anything like that. And it took me a long time to understand the difference between good debt and bad debt. How has that been for you?
This is the biggest lesson learned is debt shouldn't be a super scary word. It still is in a way in my heart when I say it. And personally, I've never, ever exceeded my current account or anything like that. But for a business, it's not true, because doing things right, doing them right from the start, and getting the results you need in order to generate that money is what will make the difference. And then you return that debt. It's not a debt that you have to carry for life. And the aspects of being scared of it, like you say, I think our parents in a way did us a disservice by raising us right, in this kind of spend only if you have it, don't over exceed and stuff like that. Sometimes you do need to. So yeah, I'm in a different place now, but I would say it took me a good few years to reach it. And in Honey and Smoke, we still hadn't reached that understanding yet. So we're very strong on creating a contingency, making sure we have a budget and a contingency in case things go wrong. And that's actually what saved us in COVID, I have to say, because we would have found ourselves in very deep water if we weren't that kind of company. But we were. It helped us kind of get through it. But now I definitely say, if you can get the funding, if you can get someone that believes that your project can make money and you can project why it will make money, probably better to do it with an investment.
Definitely. I think that there is a fine, nuanced line and a conversation to be had between being financially responsible while understanding the right amount of risk. And what it sounds like to me is that because the first restaurant had done so well and you're essentially making good cash and good revenues through that, it was almost like the thesis had been proved, and you effectively proved out what the business model was, what your audience was. You proved out that there was demand. So it's then at that point that it is good to invest the money in the next one and, make it bigger. There's been a lot of talk in the news at the moment about restaurants having to pass on food increase prices to customers and to be looking really tightly at your supply chain, at who where your food is coming from. How has this impacted your business?
It's horrible, because we are finding constant need to increase prices, but there is no way to survive this industry otherwise. More than food costs, it's staffing costs. Staff is so rare at the moment in London. It is such a shortage in our industry that you pay more and more, sometimes for less and less talented people, sometimes for really talented people, but sometimes for less. And you're still expected to kind of end up in the same bottom line at the end. And that is not possible. Not when all your costs are going up, electricity is going up, all the deliveries are going up. And all these models that we kind of started to develop very strongly during the pandemic can't exist anymore. So all the food delivery, we've almost had to eliminate all of it apart from bigger caterings, because it's almost impossible to get a delivery driver nowadays. I mean, it's crazy kind of things where you think the business model could go that way, but not if there's a solution to these things, and not if it's costing a person more to get food delivered to them than the food itself. But it is frustrating to have to continuously up your prices. And I know a lot of customers do get frustrated by it. But also, at the end of the day, we have to pay our rents, and we have to pay our chefs and our waiters, and we have to pay all the bills. And because we are still not a business that works on we like paying everyone on time, we like closing everything, we like to know where we stand at every given time. We're not, one of these businesses that pays the supplier 6 months, in 6 months' time we pay every month. And we have to move that on to a customer. And it is frustrating for them. But in reality, food has been too cheap for too long.
So just before the pandemic, like most businesses, including my own, you had growth plans that were scuppered because of COVID limiting your business. How are you thinking about the next 2 to 5 years in your business?
It's an interesting one for us. So like I said, we had this like business plan in 2019. It was heading a lot more towards the stuff that Itamar and I were passionate about. We have our own podcast, there were a lot of appearances, and the idea was for us to pivot towards a more kind of media thing, and for the business to stay as a strong business, but with moderate growth. I think in the pandemic, it became very clear that we have to be very involved in the business in order for it to stay viable. So we're putting our interests aside for a bit and focusing really on the growth of the business and what's important for that. And for us, that means a good working environment, good employees, a good group of people that want to stay there, that see a longevity in it, and that want to become really kind of invested members of the company rather than kind of fleeting chefs in and out. And
thinking about the last 12 months, where have you saved more money than you thought you would have, and where have you overspent or spent too much?
I wish I could tell you we saved anywhere. The last 12 months have been very difficult. We had to move our first kind of cash cow, the Honey & Co. Our lease was up in 10 years and they did not want to renew it. And this was a very big decision for us to make. Finding the new location, investing in it, changing it into the restaurant we wanted it to be was far, far more expensive than we ever planned to spend that kind of money. And we spent a lot. We're very happy with it now, and it's getting to what we want it to be, but it was not in the kind of budget plans. But sometimes life does that, and you sign a 10-year and you think, 10 years is so long, but it does reach and you have to deal with it. So that is probably where we mostly overspent. We really wanted to get it right. And then underspent, I really don't think anywhere. Sadly, I really think it's been a very tough year on spending. Thank goodness, contingencies. This is all I can say.
I think it's incredible that you had the foresight to, make this kitty, this pot of money just in case, because it is such a precarious business. Yeah. And you see incredible restaurants that then get boarded up, in a few months, and you don't actually know what might have gone on. So I think that's brilliant. So there we have it, some fantastic insights from author, chef and founder Sarit Packer. We've learnt about the importance of separating personal and business finances. It's so, so key that you have a business card or a business account from day one so that you know the line between what's yours and what's the company's. We also talked about good and bad debt. Sometimes you can feel as a young business owner that you don't want to take on debt or that it's too scary, but sometimes debt is good to invest in the things that you need and to grow your business, which goes on to our last point on false economy. You have, Sarit, done the buy cheap, buy twice, where, trying to be frugal and spending almost too little in the beginning can actually harm the business later on. So have a clear understanding about the areas of the business that you can scrimp and save on, and the areas of the business that you definitely need to make that worthwhile investment. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me.
Make sure you check out the Business Class Trends and Insights Hub for the latest articles and videos on everything related to small business finances. And don't forget to subscribe to the Business Class Money Minutes, which you'll find wherever you get your podcasts so you'll never miss an episode. Until next time, from me, Sharmadean Reid, and the entire Business Class Money Minutes team, goodbye and take care.